Hi, so we're going to talk about some things, probably philosophical again. But yeah, so I don't know exactly what I want to talk about, but I've probably got some things to talk about. Um, okay, what have I been thinking about today? Thinking about a lot of things today. Okay, so one of the questions that I've been recently thinking about, like today, like as in like the last half an hour this arose, and I've thought about it before as well, I think, is it enough to be, to simply not do bad? Or do we also have to actively do good to be good? So, like, avoiding doing bad things, such as stealing or murdering or doing anything of that sort, is obviously wrong. I mean, avoiding doing those things is obviously the right thing to do. We shouldn't do those things. But in order for our action to be good, do we have to actively do something good as like a counteraction almost? So like if we knew that somebody was going to murder somebody, or if we knew that somebody was going to steal something, would we have to do something good in order for us to be good? Because like actively knowing that someone is going to do something wrong and not doing anything about it, does that make us a bad person? And perhaps it does, because like then we're allowing evil to occur in the world, and surely that is just as bad as actually committing the act itself. And this is similar to Bonhoeffer's theology actually and philosophy, I guess, because he said that good Christians have to actually be active in their approach to ethics, and it's not simply good enough just to believe in God. And this also links to liberation theology in many ways as well. And Bonhoeffer, I guess, ties into this because he was trying to liberate people in a certain sense from the totalitarian political regimes. So before Bonhoeffer's time, and this probably stems back to Luther and his philosophy, Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King, just Martin Luther, who I believe was a Protestant. I can't remember exactly. Maybe it was either Catholic or Protestant. I think it was Protestant. Yeah, it was. And he said that we should obey the state, or obey the kings and the queens, because they are like the image of God almost. They teach the word of God. But Bonhoeffer wasn't willing to just accept this at face value, because obviously when Hitler came into power, he didn't recognize Hitler's acts or teachings or doctrines or ideology as being godly in pretty much any sense of the word. Like, yeah, he was he was the head of state, and he did have all the power, and supposedly he should have been doing the work of God, and he should have been obeying, but he should have been abiding by the natural law, I guess you could call it. But Bonhoeffer didn't see him as actually doing that. So he felt the need that he had to actually step up and almost be bad to be good. So his solution was to plot against Hitler and try and get him assassinated. And this did end up failing. Ultimately, he ended up getting caught. But like, it was Bonhoeffer right to take justice into his own hands almost, or to take morality into his own hands? And I guess it's a really difficult situation, because the laws at the time had become corrupt, because obviously what Hitler was doing wasn't necessarily illegal, because he had the power to be able to change the laws to make his actions actually, I guess, legally acceptable, but that didn't necessarily make them morally acceptable. And surely the law should be in some sort of accordance with morality. It can't just contradict that, otherwise it's just, well, it's not right, is it? So if Hitler was doing wrong on a mass scale, is Bonhoeffer then justified to plot against Hitler and try and get him killed? And I don't think there's a straightforward answer to that question necessarily, and it does go back to stopping people from doing bad in order for you to be good. So like, Bonhoeffer could have been a good Christian. He could have just, well, a good Christian in the traditional sense, and just, be complacent to the law, and like, be obedient and comply to what the authoritative figures are telling you to do. But like, that wouldn't necessarily be being a moral Christian. That might be being a good Christian in the sense that you're just obedient, and you do what the state tells you to do. But that doesn't necessarily make your actions right. So does it make you a good Christian if you plot to kill somebody because they're they're causing like mass destruction of some sort and committing extremely immoral acts. And maybe we couldn't say that Bonhoeffer's actions or intended actions were good, but we could say they were right, because it's what had to be done. It's like, well, what could have Bonhoeffer done? He couldn't go to the police. He couldn't go to any sort of higher authority, because all of those were under the same ideology as Hitler. They were constrained by the same set of rules that he had laid down, the man who needed to be overthrown at the time. So that it's not like he had any other option, really. But then we could argue that Bonhoeffer's actions, like if they were carried out, could have actually led to more evil. The fact that Bonhoeffer had committed a bad act, could that not put the blood on his hands almost, because he's the one who's actually murdering somebody? And this is where ethics gets really, really like difficult. Like it's not an easy thing to work out, and I don't know if there actually is a definitive answer to it. But like, is it, would it be right? Like it's really hard to argue that, but I think it would be right for Bonhoeffer to, like if Bonhoeffer did actually carry out his plot to kill Hitler, I don't think he would have been necessarily wrong, because, well, Hitler was a bit of an arsehole to say the least, and sometimes you just have to be a bit of a dickhead in return, you know. But that was all like besides the point of my initial question. It wasn't whether Bonhoeffer was right. It was whether the question was like, to be good, do we have to actually stop badness? And I think, like, if you look at it that way, if you answer that question with yes, you do have to stop badness to be good, then you can argue that Bonhoeffer was actually being good, because he was stopping bad and he was working for the greater good of the people, so the Jews and the disabled people and all of the victims of Hitler's terrible regime. So in that sense, he was good. But yeah, it's I guess it almost promotes, well, suggests a sense of moral relativism, because in any other situation, well, in many other situations, it wouldn't be right to overthrow a leader by killing them. However, in certain political circumstances, perhaps it is right. When things are overtly wrong and there doesn't seem to be any logical way of fixing it or any moral way of fixing it, perhaps you can justify murder as actually being the right thing to do, because it is promoting the greater good of society in some way. But then again, it comes back to our ability to predict consequences. So if we misjudge an act as being wrong, then that could lead to extremely detrimental consequences. And also, if it's not just that neither, because there's the social implications. Because perhaps, say, the majority of Germany, let's talk about this hypothetically, if the majority of Germany were in favour of Hitler, and they actually saw him to be a good leader and doing good things by promoting a sense of nationalism in their country and trying to promote this sense of like of the hero mentality or whatever, the Übermensch, then that's going to cause mass conflict within society, and that could actually be worse than letting Hitler carry on with what he's doing, because maybe it could lead to a civil war. Maybe I'm thinking into this a little bit too much, but like if Hitler was killed, like I'm thinking more of this in the sense of today's politics. So I know that the country is pretty much split on Donald Trump as to whether they like him or not, and that's in America. And in the UK, we've got people who are split between like the different political parties, and each side of the political party is absolutely adamant that their way of dealing with politics is correct. So I'm assuming it's probably the same in Germany, or at least was the same in Germany back in the 1930s. And so, like, was Hitler so I'm assuming that half of, well, maybe not half, maybe more than half or less than half of the population were in favour of Hitler being in power. And maybe they actually could justify his Hitler's actions. Perhaps most of it actually went on out of the spotlight, and most of it was just the whole nationalistic, like walking around and the mantras and the famous salute, and all the nice uniforms and stuff, and it was all dressed up in this big facade almost, and maybe people felt connected to that because I felt like Germany was actually getting back on its feet again after the Great Depression, and it was finally becoming economically, I guess, a little bit more wealthy than it had been, because Germany had been in a very bad state before Hitler came into power, which is partly why Hitler got into power, because he was quite a charismatic man and he promised change, and change did occur with Hitler, and that's why he got a second term. But like it's almost like that caused people to overlook the bad things he was doing in order to implement change. And yeah. Okay, that's all I want to talk about. I haven't got enough time to really talk about anything else anyway. I don't think I've actually come to a definitive answer to the questions I've tried to explore, but maybe next time we will. So yeah, thank you for watching.